Okay, can you guys hear me loud enough? I'm loud enough. I have to wear this for the recording. So if I'm too loud, let me know. I'll put this a little bit down here. So welcome to the session, how to get the most of your accounts receivable solution. I am Shivam Pandey, and I'm joined by Annette Brewer. We both are program managers at Microsoft based out of Fargo, North Dakota. So if you'd like to talk about windy winters, we are the guys to talk about. We have experienced it all. So with that, let's go right into the content. What we want you to get out of this session is to evaluate all the options that you have in accounts receivables in operations. We want to talk about all the ways to record an order. We want to talk about all the ways to record a payment, what reporting options you have in operations, and what setup options you might consider. I am not going to go into collections a lot because there's a separate session for that at 1:30, I think, today in the afternoon, and I'll be covering in depth about collections in that session. So we will be mostly focusing on invoicing, ordering, and payments in this session. What we have done is distributed this presentation into two parts. We'll be talking about orders and invoices, and then we'll be going into payments. So I'll be covering order and invoices, and we'll be covering payments. In the order and invoices, we'll be talking about the customer invoicing workspace. It's a new workspace that we introduced in the fall release of operations last year. We'll go into some of the setup processes. So we'll be talking about posting profiles. We'll be talking about workflows. We'll be talking about credit cards. And from there on, we'll go into entering an order. What are different ways to do that? There are 4 ways to do that in accounts receivable. We'll be covering 3 of them. We'll be covering FedEx invoices, recurring invoices, and sales orders. And then at the end, we'll be talking about what are your different reporting options, and specifically about print management, because that is interesting how you can set it up and how you can use it. And we have previously received many questions in that area. Once I'm done, Annette will be going through payments. She'll be talking about different options to enter a payment, a more traditional way of entering a payment versus the enter payment functionality that exists in operations. What are different ways to apply the payment from different places you can do that, and then talk a little bit about how to reevaluate your currencies. And with that, we will conclude. The first section again is order and invoices. And we're going to go right into demos. There are a lot of slides in my slide deck, and you can download and go through those. But I'm not going to cover any of those slides, and we'll be looking at the functionality itself. So with that, so how many of you have not seen operations yet? So I guess yesterday you all were able to go in and view some of the functionalities. How many of you have not seen a workspace yet? Everybody? Oh, you have not. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit in depth about it. So what is a workspace? So workspace is a form in AX which is tailored to a specific role. For example, the workspace that you're looking at currently is tailored to the customer invoicing role. So an accounts receivable clerk. The job of an accounts receivable clerk generally is what? It is to invoice the open sales order or create a new invoice. And so this workspace that you see here is tailored to that role. They are able to see information such as shipped but not invoice sales order. They are able to see any orders that are on hold, FedEx invoices that are assigned to that person who is logged in, any unposted FedEx invoices that the clerk needs to go and post, any recurring invoices, so on and so forth. And these are not static. You must have seen these before. When you click on any of these tiles, it navigates you to a list, basically, that makes up that data that is presented on that tile, right? And in the middle section, we provide some detailed information of some of the information that you're already seeing on in the tile section. For example, ship but not invoice sales order. So we bring in each of the orders right here with some information presented here. For example, the sales order number, the customer account, so on and so forth. You can click on these orders, and you will be navigated to the sales order. So you don't have to go to the sales order form, try to filter the form using the sales order number. You can navigate right from here. There are many other tabs here. I'm not going to go into detail of each of these. Also, you'll find that, for example, we have a find customer. So if you were looking for a customer, you wanted to create a free text invoice for them, you can just type their name or their customer account, and the customer will be here. And then you can start taking actions right from here, like creating a free text invoice, looking at their balances, looking at their open transactions. And that we have a number of links that we think that the accounts receivable clerk will navigate to on a regular basis. So again, the aim of this workspace here is to make the clerk more efficient, to minimize the time to navigate to different places to do their job, to get all the information that they need right in one place so that they can prioritize their work and make right decisions. And you will see workspaces spread across the spectrum in operations. And this is just one of them. And it will be showing a payment workspace, a customer payment workspace to you guys. OK, so that's workspaces. And next, what we're going to do is the most basic setup that is required in accounts receivable before you can start posting transactions is create a posting profile. And basically, a posting profile is where you define where your summary transactions, what ledger account your summary transactions are going to get posted to. So what you're looking right now is the customer posting profile form. As you can notice, you can create multiple posting profiles on this form. In this case, I have created a general posting profile, and you would notice there are multiple lines on the posting profile form. You can define a posting profile for a customer account. So in this case, I have not created one, but you can create a posting profile for a customer account, for a specific customer group, or you can define a posting profile for a default posting profile for all your customers. So basically, what you can do here is provide the summary accounts. There are some other accounts you can provide here. Also, you can control which collection letter sequence is going to be used for transactions that use this posting profile, and what is the interest percentage that will be charged on those transactions that use this posting profile. You can also control certain business processes for transactions that use this posting profile. For example, you can enable or disable automatic settlements from here. So if for some customers you always use automatic settlement functionality, you can enable it here or disable it. You can control interest and collection letters from here. So whether you want to send an interest note to the customer or not, send a collection letter to a customer or not. So you can define this at a very granular level. Now, you can always override this information on the customer itself. Even though the customer might be part of a posting profile, you create one posting profile that applies to all your customers, and you wanted to override these things, you can go ahead and do it on the customer master record. So once you have defined the posting profile for your organization, the next thing to do is to set a default posting profile that your organization is going to use. And this is at per legal entity basis. So when I navigate to accounts receivable setup parameters, in the ledger and sales tax tab, you have this is where you define the default posting profile that will be used when posting your transactions. So if I assume that you have set your general ledger, this is the only setup required for accounts receivable. If your number sequence is set, that's one other. But if your number sequence is set, this is all you need to start posting transactions in accounts receivable. It's very minimal setup that you need. OK, so your accounts are now set up. Now you have to make a decision. How many of you have workflow processes in your organizations where when you create invoices, they have to go through an approval process? You do. And few of you here have those. So let me show you how you can set up some basic workflows within accounts receivable. We support out-of-box 8 documents in accounts receivable that we support workflows on, excluding retail. If you bring in retail functionality, that's a huge list. But I'm just talking about core accounts receivable. We support 8 documents. We support it on payment journals. We support it on sales orders, free text invoices, recurring invoices, and bill of exchange, and many other. So let me navigate to the customer invoicing workspace. And you know what? I have customized this workspace. And I think you must have seen this personalization scenarios in other sessions you have attended. But these links are not shipped out of box right here, the setup links. They're not shipped out of box for this workspace and operations. Because the accounts receivable clerk generally doesn't do any setup. It's already set up for him. He just has to go post invoices. But for this demo, I have easily added these links. And I'll be showing you some of this in my collection session, so if you want to see how you can personalize stuff on a workspace, do attend that. So from here, I'm going to navigate to my workflow form. And you'd see that I've already created a workflow. But let me click on New anyway to show you the complete list. I have retail enabled, so you'll see a huge list of workflows that you can create. But the top 8 are those ones that that come with without retail enabled. So I've already created a workflow for my recurring invoices. We'll talk about recurring invoices in a few minutes, but let's look at the workflow, but because it applies in general for any document. So I've created a very simple workflow. The workflow has 2 endpoints. It starts and it ends. So basically, you create a recurring invoice. It has to go through an approval process. When it is approved, it'll end. And let's drill in and look what I have done here. So I'll go to step 1, look at the properties. And I'll look at the assignment. So basically, how I have created this workflow is that when I enter a recurring invoice, I will not be able to post it unless it is approved. And who approves it? A user. And who is that user? Arnie. So it has to be approved by my manager, suppose he's Arnie, before the invoice can be posted. And there are no other conditions. I mean, you can have certain conditions set up. Only if this condition is met, then run this workflow. But I have no other conditions set up. So all the recurring invoices have to go through the approval process. Now, this is a very, very, very simple workflow that I have created. But if you look, direct your attention on the left in the flow control here, you can use things like conditional decisions. If the amount is greater than $10,000, then put it in the workflow. Otherwise, approved. Manual decisions, where the system cannot make that judgment, whether it has to go in one direction or the other. You can have that. You can use parallel activities. If multiple people have to approve your workflow in your organization, then you can have parallel activities set up that one is approving, and it's not linear, so the other doesn't have to wait on it. So you can use these tools to create complex workflows. And it is as simple as creating a simple one. So it's very easy to do that.
You can do this by client too, can't you?
I'm sorry?
You can do it by client.
You can do it by an account.
So this person, her account, whatever you call it.
Right.
Approves all for this client.
Yes, you can. You can set conditions like that, yes. Amounts for this account, for any other aspect of the invoice, you can set conditions on that. So I'm sorry, the question was, can you do conditional workflows? That was the question. For example, if I had, for a given account, I want to send it to a specific person, can I create a workflow for that? And the answer to that is yes, you can absolutely do that. OK, so that's workflow. And so your workflow is set up, your accounts are set up. Now, most modern companies use credit card, take credit card payments from their customers. And in operations, we support full-fledged credit card functionality. We support authorizations, captures, refunds, partial authorizations, partial captures, and partial refunds. So let's go ahead and set up our credit card processing. And then when we are talking about sales orders, we'll talk about how the whole authorization capture process works. So let me go back to my workspace. And I have a link out there, so I don't have to search for it. I'm going to go to credit card. So in accounts receivable setup, there's a form called as payment services, where you can set up your default payment providers. Out of box, we support 3 payment providers. And let me quickly edit it. And when I say payment providers, think about payment connectors. Connectors are basically things that connect to the payment provider. So by default, we support 3 payment providers. It's a test payment provider. It goes nowhere. It's for validation purposes. The other one is the MasterCard Simplify payment provider, and the third one is Verifone payment provider. The MasterCard Simplify payment provider is card not present scenario, so basically you're not swiping the card there. The Verifone payment provider is card present, so you require the swipe of the card. So depending on the scenario that you want, you can choose one of them. We do ship with a payment SDK. So suppose you don't want to integrate with these out-of-box payment providers that we ship. You want to use your own. You can use the payment SDK that we ship. It's customization to create your own, integrate with your own payment provider. And it's very simple. What you need to do is navigate to the LCS. So basically, there's this button. When I click on it, it'll open the LCS tab for me. Here, you can go through the sign-up experience. You can compare the two of them. It's not much of a comparison if you look at it. But you can compare the payment providers, and you can sign up from here. Once you have signed up, all the information is brought into operations, and your payment provider will be configured. So for this demo, we'll just be using the test provider. I'm not going to integrate with any of the other two. But I want to direct your attention to the address verification and the credit card CVV verification tab. So we do support out-of-box complex address verifications at different levels. You had a question? So yes, we do. It doesn't come with standard AR functionality. You have to enable, I think it is call center to get it, but you can do that. So if you wanted complex address verifications, for example, I want to only verify the customer account name, or I want to verify the combination of customer accounts and the zip codes. You can do all that complex verifications in operations. Also, we support the CV verification, the the 3 digits at the back of your card, or if you have an Amex, the 4 digits. We do support that functionality. And if you notice for this scenario, for this demo, we have CVV on, and I'll show you when it appears when we are processing a sales order. Okay, good. So we have some basic setup completed. We set up the account, we set up the workflow, and we have set up the credit card. So we are on a roll here. We are ready to process our first invoice, and let's do that. So in accounts receivable, we support, again, I said 4 kinds of ways to enter an order. We have a FreeDex invoice, Ricking invoice, project invoice, and sales order invoices. The first one I'm going to talk about is FreeDex invoice. Think of FreeDex invoice as a very simple invoice. It doesn't integrate into inventory. So if you had to enter an order, for example, a service order, where there was no inventory accounting needed, you use the FreeDex invoice. Let me navigate there. So I'm going to go to the unposted FreeDex invoices, which will take me to the same form. It only filters the list to show me the invoices that are not posted. Next, I'm going to create a new FreeDex invoice. Okay, I want to choose the customer account or the order account where the service was performed. I'll choose US001. And when I choose this, you would see that the invoice account is defaulted by itself. The invoice account per order account or the customer account can be set on the customer master record. If there is no invoice account associated with the customer master record, we use the order account as the invoice account. So the order, in this case, the order account has been defaulted into the invoice account. You'd also notice that there are some default parameters that have been defaulted here from the customer master. For example, terms of payment, method of payment. If I go to the line details, you would see that some of the dimensions have defaulted from the customer master too. So you can set these values on the customer. So when you create the invoice, you don't have to go update them each time. Also, you'd notice that the due days have been automatically calculated for me, and that is based on the invoice date and the terms of payment that you've associated with this customer. Now, once you have the header information there, the next thing is to enter the invoice, right? Enter the line. So let me enter the first line. I'm going to perform a service. I had performed a service for this customer, so I'm going to use the service account. When I select the service account, you'd notice that the item sales tax group automatically defaulted for you because it is associated with that main account. Next, I'm going to specify the unit price of $200. Now, suppose you had to enter 100, I would not recommend you do that, but suppose you had to enter hundreds of lines for an invoice. Using this experience, I mean, it's good enough. Like when I do a down arrow key here, it enters a new line for me. I can keep typing. We have tried to make the experience very easy for you. But we have seen that accounts payable clerks, payment clerks, they like doing work in Excel. How many of you like Excel data entry better than other forms, right? Many of you. Because you're familiar with this experience. It's easy to use. So what we have done in operations is basically we have integrated Excel deeply with FreeText Invoices. So what I'm going to do next is open this FreeText Invoice in Excel and add a line there. And you can add multiple lines from here. So let's do that. So I'm going to say open in Excel invoice. And I'm going to download the Excel file, save it, and then open it. So what it is doing now is basically this Excel document using the Excel add-in that you see on the left here is integrating or connecting to operations, and then it will do its authentication and get the FreeText invoice down into the Excel. Now you would see that the header information is populated. Also, the line information is populated. And in a second, I'll show you that once you do edits to any of these pieces of information and you publish it, it goes back into operation. Okay, so again, now you notice the header information is right here. It was brought from the invoice. The line that I had entered is also brought in. Now let's start entering the new line, right? I'm going to say I performed another service, and I'm going to go to the next field. Look at the Excel add-in experience here. The account list is available within Excel. You don't have to guess. You don't have to remember. No sticky notes are required. It's all available for you here. And so you can, if you wanted to reference something, you can search in this here, or you can start typing, right? So I'm going to type same one. And similarly, for your sales tax group and item sales tax group, all that lookup information is available there. But I'm not going to enter any other information. I'm just going to enter the amount, and I'm going to enter the line number for this particular line. Once I'm done with this, and suppose you were going to enter hundreds of lines, you do that, what you can do is publish. And when you publish this, basically what's happening is that the content that you added here is now getting refreshed into operations. So when I go back into the FreeText invoice and I refresh it here, you would see that the line appears, right? Tightly integrated. It makes your life easier if you are familiar with Excel and like using that. Good question?
Yeah. What kind of user license
There is no special, so the question is, what kind of user license do I need for Excel add-in? There's no special user license required. It comes standard with operations.
So if I give it to someone that doesn't have access to 365, they can enter it?
No.
So they still need a user
Yes. Yeah, they need a user license. But the Excel functionality doesn't require an additional license for you to pay for to use it. But you need a user. You need to be a user of operations to use it. Okay, so
I noticed when you did the upload that you didn't fill in the tax group, and when you published it, it doesn't come in here. So there's no validation that comes in?
there is some basic validations, but we consider what you entered on the on Excel as the master. So we don't try to default stuff. What if you did not want to default it, right? So we don't try to make that judgment by ourselves. I'll take like one more question, and then we'll save the questions for the last so that we can make it through the demo.
Does it check any of the mandatory fields
Yes, it does.
in the Excel?
Yeah, the question is, does it check any of the mandatory fields in the Excel? Yes, when you try to publish it, it will give you warnings as to errors as to what went wrong, and you can go fix it and then try to publish it again. So, yeah, so again, tight integration, it's easy for you to, work with. Next, also what you can do on FreeDX Invoices is that we have integrated the source document framework, and not going technical, I mean, that's a technical terminology within operations. But what you can do is you can do special things like distribute a single line to multiple accounts or multiple dimensions. In this case, if I wanted to split this, amount on this line into 2 different dimensions, I could, just open this, go here, clear this field out because I don't want this, choose from a list of dimensions that are valid for this main account. So I'm going to choose one, split the amount 50% between both of these, and I'm done. So with that easily, you can split the amounts into different main accounts, different dimensions. So it basically saves you a lot of time, when you're entering multiple lines. It saves the number of lines on your invoices too. So I've distributed, I'm done there. Now I'm going to go into, accounting, and I'm going to finally look at where the amounts are going to, what accounts and what dimensions my amounts are going to. So that all information is present here. This all looks good, and I'm ready to, post the invoice. So when I post the invoice, there are multiple options how I can do it. I can either post the invoice right away. So for one of invoices that we recommend, you post it right away. But also what you can do is create batch processes in your organization. For example, in the nightly runs, or twice or thrice a daily, you can program a batch process to go look at any open invoices that are out there and go ahead and post it for you. So that is also possible. So for this demo, I'm not going to post this invoice. But I want to show you another functionality, right? So I'm going to go back. So I'm going to go back to all FreeDX Invoices. I had entered a FreeDX invoice yesterday for the purpose of this demo. And if you look at the number of lines, they're huge, right? There are like hundreds and hundreds of lines in here. What if you did a mistake when you were posting this invoice on one of the lines and the quantity was wrong? So you need to correct it. And what we support in operations is an easy way to correct an invoice. If this functionality was not present, imagine the amount of work you have to do. You have to enter the invoice again. You have to enter the lines again. Now with XLR, and it becomes a little bit easier. You can go ahead and type it in there. But still, hundreds of lines, that's a lot of hours wasted. But what we do is support the correct invoice functionality. And by using this functionality, what happens is that the original invoice is automatically reversed, and a new invoice is created with all the information from the original invoice copied back to the new invoice. So let's correct it quickly. There. Now this is the new invoice that has been created. All the information has been copied back from the original one on this one. Now you can go ahead, and it tells you you're correcting a FreeDX invoice. You can go ahead and change the quantity here to 2. It updates it, and you're ready to post it. So if I post this invoice quickly, hopefully it goes through quickly. And I want to show you that how you can track this information too. It's not like you correct it and there is no auditing capability. You have complete auditing capability as to what was the original invoice, what was the canceling invoice, and what it was corrected to. So if I go to the header view, wrong tab. That information is available in the corrections window right here. Okay, so that was FreeDX Invoice. Remember, FreeDX Invoice is for simple invoices where no inventory is required. The next thing I'm going to show you is a recurring invoice. The recurring invoice is based on a FreeDX invoice. But you will use recurring invoices in situations where you have to bill the customers the same amount based on the same business terms periodically. For example, think of a subscription service. You ship magazines or a certain service to your users on a monthly basis. It's a lot of work entering invoices for those customers again and again and again and again on a monthly basis. So we have simplified that. To use the recurring invoice functionality, what you need to do is, first set up, I'll go back to my workspace. It's easy for me to find links that way. And I'm going to go to where is it? Well, it's not easy after all. Probably I didn't add it. So I'm going to go to Invoices, Recurring Invoices, and Freedix Invoice templates. So Freedix Invoice templates are the basis on which the recurring invoices are created. You will notice that there are 3 templates I have created here. Let's look at one of them. The header information is all pretty simple, so I'm not going to go into detail. But on the line, I have created one line. So all the customers who use this template will be charged $25.99. So that is what you define on the template, the business terms and the line information. Now, what you need to do is go ahead and assign this template to your customers. If you've already assigned the template to the customers and you want to see who it is assigned to, you can use the Assign Customers functionality. And in this case, you'd notice that I've already assigned this template to this customer, Control Store Retail San Diego. Let's go look at that customer and see how this template is going to work there. So on the Invoice tab, when I look at Recurring Invoices, this is basically the place where you define the recurrence pattern. What you can define is what is the billing start date, right? And what is the billing end date? So suppose your customer says, okay, I want a subscription for a service for only a year. You can set that end date here. Also, optionally, if you wanted to set a maximum amount that you want to charge to this customer on a periodic basis, you can do that. I'm not sure how, if it is being used as much by our customers or not. Also, you can specify where the business terms are coming from. Are they coming from your Freedix Invoice template that you've created, or do you want them to come from your customer account? And at the end, the most important, how often you want to create this invoice. So in this case, I said that create the invoice on a daily basis, not realistic, but for the purpose of this demo. Okay. So also, you can look at the history. So let me look at the history for this one to see that if this invoice was created previously and what it was created and what amount was on the invoice. You can get all that information in the history section. Great. So once you have created the recurring invoice, it's time to generate one. So to generate a recurring invoice, you need to go to, again, generate recurring invoices. And it's a pretty simple form. Provide the invoice date, provide the generation date, choose the template that you want to create the recurring invoice for. So in this case, I'll choose subscription 1 and click OK. It says recurring invoices was successfully created. Now let's go ahead and post the recurring invoices. So I'm going to go to Post Recurring Invoices form. And basically, you'll see 2 groups here. The one that I had previously created that we saw in the history form. And this is the new one that has been created today, right, with the generation date of today. I didn't change the invoice date. To look into the detail of this group, I can go ahead and click on that. And this is the list of invoices that has been created. So since the start date for the template was yesterday, and I generated the recurring invoice today, the template was set to generate recurring invoices every day. So yesterday, today, 2. So we have 2 invoices that has been created. If you want to look into the detail of this invoice, which you might not want to because it's based on a template, you've already defined it, so you don't have to validate each of these. But suppose you wanted to edit it. Oops, wrong place. I'll look at the details. And it takes you to the Freedix invoice form. You can edit this invoice if there were certain changes needed here and save it. And it will post with those edits for you. You can change the amount on the Freedix invoice. So I can go ahead and change whatever I want here. And that's totally OK. We allow that. So once the invoice has been created, it's time to post it. What? The post button is disabled. Any guesses? In the starting of the demo, we created a workflow, remember? And in the workflow we created, it has to go through an approval process. So you cannot post this invoice unless it has been approved by Arnie. So I have a window open, and I'm not going to submit this one because it takes time to go through this whole validation workflow process. So not much, but little, and I don't want to waste a single minute. So I'm now logged in as Arnie right here, who is my manager. And you would notice that in this work item assigned to me, I have a work item there. And this was the recurring invoice that I had submitted previously, yesterday, for the purpose of this demo. So it's very easy to identify what work items are assigned to you, what work needs to be completed. And it is equally easy to go to that document, right? So I can click on this recurring invoice approvals. It will take me here. And when I click on that, it takes me to the list of invoices here. And from here, I can go ahead and, whoops, something wrong. I set up probably the workflow wrong, but from here you can go ahead and approve the invoice, and then it goes to the workflow again and goes to the user for you to post it. You'll be able to post it then. Cool. So that's recurring invoices. Again, use it for subscription services, things that you have to charge on a periodic basis. Now we're going to talk about sales order invoices.
But does it say anywhere that it's pending approval? That's the reason rather than...
Yeah. So I think, it does. I'm not going to go back, but as a user, when I log in, when I click on workflow, I can see the complete history there as to what stage it is, where it is, and what's the next thing that's going to happen with it. So options that's going to happen with it. So, okay. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and show you how to create a sales order with credit cards. I'm sorry, I'm rushing through it. We have a lot of content to present, and I only have like 10 minutes now. I think right less than that. So, okay. So I have already entered an order for US 001. So let me go ahead and open it. It's a simple sales order that I've created. And sales, there is another, I think, session that goes through the whole sales process. So I would recommend that you go ahead and attend that if you want to understand how, how the inventory is integrated into sales orders. We'll not go into detail of that. We'll only be looking at invoicing and some of the options there. So I've already created a sales order, and there is one item on here that is an installation service, and I'm charging $10,000, a hefty amount for my service that I have performed. I got a call back from the customer, and they said that they would want to charge this order on their credit card. So let me go to the header view. We have already set up the payment provider, remember. That part is done. So now we just need to, take the credit card order. So I'll go to the price and discounts. What I need to do next is select credit cards as my terms of payment. I select that. And once I've done that, I can select the credit card. Where did that go? Right there. Oops, I have no credit card number. Okay, that's fine. I need to call the customer, so I'll call the customer, and now I'll want to register the credit card. So I'm going to click on credit card, and I'm going to say register. So basically what happens now is that it opens the credit card list form, and you can create a new credit card, enter a new credit card, or register a new credit card right here. Basically, when you open this window, it connects you to your payment provider. It brings in the information that the payment provider needs, and it is very custom per payment provider. So I'm going to say, I'm going to charge myself $10,000, and it's going to be Visa and for. Don't try to use it. It's a fake credit card. You won't go far with that one. So I'm going to create and register a new credit card in my system. Done. So credit card is registered, and usually it's that fast. Blame it to the payment provider if it's slow. So I can now select the credit card on my sales order. So once you have selected the credit card, usually there's a time between shipping and invoicing, right? So you want to authorize the credit card. You want to reserve the money on the credit card. We support authorization when you create a packing slip. So when you create a packing slip, the credit card is authorized automatically. But also, we support manual authorization. So when I say credit card and authorize, so basically what it's doing right now is it's trying to reserve that amount as a balance on the credit card. So I'm going to enter the CVV number. Remember, we had turned that on when we did the setup, so it asks for CVV. So I'm going to enter the CVV number, fake, and then do OK. So basically, the credit card has been authorized. If you want to look into the details of whether it was successful or not, well, I know it's successful, but if I wanted to look into detail, I can go to the history form, where it says, OK, the sales order was authorized on this credit card. You don't get the complete credit card number, just the last 4 digits. And it is approved. When I click on that, you can go into the details of what was sent to the credit card provider and what you got back. Point to note, we don't store credit cards in operations. That's all taken care by the payment provider. What we have is a simple blob, which has no information of your credit card, and it cannot be used by anybody. So we are all safe and compliant there. Okay, so the authorization is complete. And now, next, what I want to do is go ahead and invoice the sales order. So basically, when you invoice the sales order, the credit card is captured for you. So the amount that was reserved is now pulled into your bank account. So I'm going to say all. I'm going to print the invoice and click OK. So basically, this will go ahead and invoice the sales order, print the sales order to the screen so I can show you what's printed out there. And then it will capture the amount, and it will apply the payment to the invoice, automatically settle it. You don't have to do anything. It's all done for you automatically. I should have warmed up the system. The first time it usually takes a little more, but then it works. OK, so I'm going to continue to talk. So the next thing that I'm going to show you quickly is basically summarization. There are different ways to summarize multiple sales order onto the invoices. I'm not going to go through the complete process due to the lack of the time, but I'm going to talk about the options that you have to summarize multiple sales orders into single invoice if you want to, and what combinations you can try there. So let this all print. I'm going to continue talking. So there are basically 4 summarization options that you have available when you are invoicing multiple sales orders. So suppose if your customer requests that I don't like you sending me multiple invoices every month. Why don't you take all my orders, put it onto one invoice, and send it to me? In operations, you can group the sales orders based on 3 things. There are many things, but 3 basic things. Invoice account, order account, there's one of them I'm forgetting right now, sorry. So there's only 3, right? Not 4. I was wrong, there's only 3. So there is other one called as the automatic summary. And basically, when you choose automatic summary, it goes and looks at the customer account. What are the parameters you want per customer? How do you want it to be summarized? So if I go to this order, hopefully, quickly, I'll be able to show you that. So let's go ahead. Oh, this was already posted but not refreshed. This is the last one I posted. Sorry about that. Let's choose another one and go to invoice. And invoice. So here's the summary update available to you. So it's basically, there's more options, like I said. Invoice account, order account, per packing slip, if you want to group packing slips together, and then the automatic summary. I'm not going to show you this functionality for lack of time, but go ahead and explore this out, and send me any questions that you might have around this. I'll be glad to answer those. I'm also going to quickly talk about the printing functionalities. I mean, I just showed you sales invoice being printed, right? Out of box in accounts receivable, we support more than 20 SSRS reports out of box, from account statements, free text invoices, collection letters, interest notes, to reconciliation reports, a wide variety, and many internal, for example, balances, credit limits, aging. We have a wide variety of reports that we support out of box. If I had to show you all of those, it will require a complete session, probably more than that. So I'm not going to go into detail of all the reports that we support. But I want to quickly show you how you can control where your documents are printed to. For example, you must have been in a situation where some customers want the invoices shipped to them, printed and shipped to them, while others want the invoices emailed to them, right? They don't want any mail sent to them. You can set up all that in accounts receivable using print management. So let's cancel. And let's go to my workspace. I have a link for this right here, and I'm going to go to print management and print management. So basically, if you look at the list here, all the external documents that we ship to customers have print management settings that you can select for. So if I select, for example, the customer account statement and look at the print management settings, there are different options to choose from. You can choose whether you want to send an original or a copy. You can stop printing a certain document in your company if you'd like to. You can select a format in which you want to report format that you want to use when printing a given report, and you can override all these settings on the customer level. So you can define it per customer basis. So if you wanted a different report format assigned to a customer, you can do that. Also, here you can define the different print destinations that you want to send this report to. So again, think about this. You can override all of this on per customer level. So for a customer, if they want it printed and sent to them in a mail, you can choose the printer option. If they want it emailed, you can use the email option. In the email option too, we have simplified it a lot for you. For example, you don't have to enter the email addresses you're sending to on the print management form. You can reference back to the purpose. So if you had an email address with a business purpose that you have created for your customer, you can use that. Or you can choose an option to send the report to the primary contact. So you don't have to manage emails at multiple places. The emails sit on the customer account, and you're just referencing them from here. And also, you can choose an internal person within your organization, an accountant or accounts receivable manager, if you want to send a copy to them from here. So we do provide a lot of flexibility. With that, I'm 2 minutes over my time, so I'm going to conclude here. And we're going to shift focus now to the payment functionality, and it will walk you through that.
All right.
Yep. The question is it possible to use email templates? I don't believe so. You can't. You can specify notes on your invoices. You can do that, but I don't think there is email template support for that. Let's think up after this presentation. There's a notes functionality. Yes, you can specify for interest note or collection letter per collection letter sequence what you want to type on there when you're sending it. But I don't think it's template functional. Let's think upon that one. Thank you.
Shivam, there's one thing. I'm just going to see, does anyone use payment schedules? Anyone in the room? We have a couple. Do you want to just really quickly overview? I know that there's a new feature. That's why I want to just quickly talk about that in your section.
Yeah, there is one thing that I want to talk about, but I did not because of lack of time. But let's go to all sales orders. So we were getting a lot of bugs. In accounts receivable around payment schedule, where there was a lot of confusion among the users as to how the payment schedule was defaulted to the invoices. And what we have tried to do with this, fix is try to, clarify when the payment schedule is defaulted to the invoice and when it is not. So when you are entering the sales order, there's an option to specify a payment schedule on the order. Which tab is that in? Payment schedule right here. So if I select a payment schedule, I can view the payment schedule, save this right here. So when I click, cool. Hold on, there's something wrong with this one. Yeah, because it's credit card. So it's saying we cannot have a payment schedule with credit card. That's fine. So I'm going to select the payment schedule again. And I'm going to go to payment schedule. So previously, when you selected the payment schedule here, when you started viewing the payment schedule here, I'm not going to show you right now because it's not opening up. But when you open the payment schedule form, when you posted the invoice, it used to use the payment schedule that you had created here and not regenerate the payment schedule based on the invoice state. So what we did was we added a fresh parameter called copy precisely to invoice. So once you open the payment schedule form and click copy precisely to the invoice, that payment schedule will be copied to the invoice and used. The payment schedule will not be recalculated based on the invoice state. So that's the clarification we wanted to provide there.
All right, thanks for doing that, Shiva. I always like to point out the new functionality especially. All right, onward we go to the payments. Thank you for hanging in here. I know this is a lot of information for you. I won't go into real detail about the customer payments workspace because Shivam did a great job overviewing that functionality in terms of the workspace. We have the tiles, of course, summary tiles. We have the lists in the middle and the links on the other side. I want to just go over some of the functionality, though, that was new in fall. One of the things that we added was the ability for you to look across your companies for your invoices past due and across these lists. What you're seeing here as I open this up are 3 companies, and the reason it's filtered to 3 is because we filter it to the centralized payment clerk's view. So in my organizational structure, I have set up centralized payments, and I'm a clerk that's responsible for these 3 companies, so I can view those companies only. Let me just go ahead. I'll pick, I think we've got some past due in DEMF. I'll go ahead and select, and you can see that it brought me a few invoices that are in my other company. Right from here, I could go ahead and look at the settlement history if I wanted to. The payments not settled, they're simply prepayments, if you will. You know you have some work to do here. You have to settle those with something eventually. So those actions are front and center as well. The find transactions, Shivam showed a bit of this on the invoicing workspace. I really love this feature. It's actually searching your entire customer transactions table. That's a lot of records for a lot of our customers. So we don't default anything. As you know, it would be quite a performance hit if we were filling in 1 million records here. But you can just quickly start typing, and you can search by numbers or customers, for example. And it will filter the list for you. Again, here we have that company selector. If I want to look across my companies, I can certainly do that. So let's start making some payments here. We'll pay off a few of those invoices. And there's a few methods of making the customer payments. Sometimes it surprises us when we go on customer visits. People aren't aware of that, but it makes sense. You know, you're trained in on one method. You're not even aware there are other ways to do it. So let's go ahead, and I'll start off with what I'll just call the traditional method. I'll go ahead and select the journal name, and that's simply the container that holds the lines. And we'll go into the lines. I'll go ahead. Shivam, I think you were using this customer at some point, so we'll go ahead and take a look at this. Just a few things. Is anyone familiar with 2012? I guess we didn't ask that. Okay. We have cleaned up the forms a bit. I'll say we've decluttered them quite a bit in the journal areas as well as our settlement forms. The form itself, you can see there are actions above the grid, such as the settled transactions. Those pertain to the line that you're focused on. The things up in the header or the ribbon are actions against the entire journal. In this case, if you know the invoice that the customer is paying for, you can get a lookup here of those invoices that are available. And you could go ahead and select it right from here. I'm not going to do that at this point, though. I'll also show you the other way that you could do that. Go into the Settle Transactions form. And here you see a list of the invoices that are available to settle. Here again, we tried to promote the most commonly used fields and clean up the order that you see things in the form as well. The second column there, I know it's very hard to read, it's called Fully Settle. This is something that we have enabled in Dynamics 365 for everyone. It used to be controlled by country configuration. So only certain countries could see this functionality. Our partners really loved the functionality and asked us to lift that restriction. So it is available for everyone. It's still controlled by a config key, but it is available to not just certain countries, but to everyone. What fully settle means, I'll call it like a quick write-off. Let's say, for instance, let's say I'm looking at that $1,000 free text invoice. Maybe the customer short paid me $9.99. It's a quick way of writing off that dollar. And when I mark this, when I post it, it will post to the cash discount account, and it will reduce that balance. There will be no remaining balance on that. So that's an option for you. Let's just go ahead and mark this particular invoice, and let's only pay, let's say the customer paid $100 on this, so I can keep working with this record. And I'll click OK. Bring that information and the amount back to the lines at this point. Okay, let's go ahead, and I want to show you another feature that we have, and this is new for the fall release. We allow you to have multiple unposted payments settled against one invoice. So what does that mean? Let's say this particular customer sent me not just a $100 check, they had given cash. That doesn't probably make a lot of sense, but maybe they sent in 2 checks that I'm processing at the same time. I can go ahead and enter that right from here. So let's just go ahead and I'll create a new line for this customer again. And I'll go in here. We'll settle. Once I open up the settlement form, you'll notice there's a little icon. Again, I realize that's hard to see from the back, but there's an icon here showing me that it has already been marked and for settlement against something else. But I can go ahead and I can mark it again. It recognizes that I only have $900 left that I can possibly settle. We'll just put in like $15 here. And I'll click OK. And now what I have is another payment that's unposted against this same invoice. In previous versions, it used to stop you. You couldn't even mark that transaction. So kind of a nice improvement there as well. All right, so I'm happy with that. That's the one method. That's a traditional method. We also have the payment proposal. And this is not a common method that we see our customers using. This is for the direct debit scenarios where the customer has authorized you to pull the funds out of the bank. We won't go into this in a lot of detail. I'll just say that you have the nice selection criteria that you can enter in to select your invoices by due date or cash discount date. You can tell it the date that you want it to happen. And then we still do have the advanced parameters here as well for those of you that were familiar with 2012. Okay, that was the second method. And then I want to show you the third method. You could use the Enter Customer Payments form itself. And a lot of people aren't familiar with this. It's kind of surprising. This is probably my favorite method just because it's quick. This is the hybrid method where it combines the invoice and the payment together in the one view. Remember, on the traditional view, I had to go into the settlement form or get that lookup to see the invoices. I don't have to do that here. The thing that I like about this form is that you can search by customer or by invoice. So let's say you receive the check, you don't recognize, let's say, the name, you know the amount, and in the memo, perhaps they did put their invoice number. So at least you can search based on that. I'll just go ahead. FTI was one of them, and then when I open the lookup, you can see here it will allow me to select my invoice, and it will fill in all of the customer information. It'll also fill in the settlement information. So here's my invoices, and you can see that I still had that $885. It marked it for me. We get a lot of questions about why we don't just fill in this amount. Some people are irritated by that. It's kind of a checks and balance, if you will. The other reason, we realize that a lot of people don't fully pay. Our option would be to default this to fully pay all the time, and then you'd have to go and edit it. So we've chosen to deliberately leave that blank and use it as a check and balance in this case. Some of the information at the top, you can see defaults in based on what you've selected or the customer that you're using. I'll go ahead and let's go ahead and we'll type in the amount. The method of payment derives the bank that this will be deposited in. So we'll go ahead. I could select as many as I wanted in here, too. I should note that, as well as I could change the amounts. So I like that method, again, because it's just the hybrid. This has saved into the journal. Let's go back here. And we'll take a look at the 3 values that I have here. So that kind of showed off, in summary, the 3 methods. We have that traditional method, the payment proposal, and then the hybrid of the enter customer payments. I'll also just enter in another transaction here. Let's say I received another check. And there's a couple scenarios. Let's say a few minutes ago I said I received a check. I didn't recognize the customer name. Luckily, they had put something in the memo, though, that allowed me to figure it out. What if you don't know at this point? You want to get it deposited. Of course, you want your money as fast as possible, but you don't have to settle. That's one option you have in here. You can just leave it blank. You don't have to settle. You can settle at a later time. The second scenario is it could be a prepayment. So let's pretend, for scenario's sake, that this is actually a prepayment. So I'm not going to put in the invoice. And let's just say I'll enter in like $200 here. And that could be a check as well. I am satisfied with that. So let's go ahead and post it. And I want to show you how you can apply or settle that prepayment against a sales order. So let's say you would ask the customer to be able to send in that prepayment. So I'm going to go to the sales order area and just give you a little tip on what you can do here. I have a sales order out here already for this customer, I believe. Let's see. Shiva might think, oh, wow, we've got a lot of stuff out here. Let's just take this one. I don't even know what's on here, but we'll just take this one and I'll show you. The open transactions under the invoice tab can be utilized. And there you can see my prepayment for $200. I could mark it right here, and that reserves this prepayment specifically for this sales order. So some other clerk, they can't apply it to anything else. It is reserved here. Now, one of the questions that I get quite often, or actually I'll call it a complaint suggestion, is that if you partially invoice, this scenario does not hook it back up to the sales order. So let's say, for instance, I have a $200 prepayment. I only have a $10 invoice going through. The system will consume that $10 and apply that, settle it to the prepayment. But then that prepayment for the $190 is just sitting out there. Anyone else can take it. The suggestion is, can you please link it back up? You know what sales order it is. We don't have that functionality yet, unfortunately. It's pretty high up on our feature list, though, of things that people are requesting. So hopefully in the near future you'll see that coming. I'm not going to settle this I want to reuse it. I kind of want to show you that scenario. Let's go to the customers. And for this customer, let's go into the transactions. And what we have seen when we've done customer visits, people spend a lot of time in the customer transaction area looking through the different transactions that they have. Maybe they're looking for prepayments that need to be settled. One of the big complaints that we had from AX 2012 was that the settlement options were not accessible right from within this screen. And that was frustrating because you had to kind of write down numbers and remember, and then there were too many clicks to get to the settlement. So we have cleaned that up a bit, and you can see here, actually let me show, I want to find that free text invoice that I just had here. Oh, number 7. The settlement information is right here. So I can just go in and we could look at the settlement history. I had settled against a few different things here. I can see that information from the transactions that I just posted. If I wanted to undo, let's go ahead and look at that. This as well has been cleaned up because it's showing you a much more trimmed down list. You know, I could just select one of these things and it would automatically mark its corresponding pair, and I could reverse that out if I wanted to. In terms of that prepayment that we had just looked at, you know, maybe let's change up the scenario a little bit, and let's say that it wasn't a prepayment. It was just one of those things that I didn't know what to apply to because I couldn't tell from the customer's check. I could go ahead and I could settle right from this area as well. All right, the other thing that I wanted to talk about just in general, to give you a tip on, we get a lot of questions about the accounting on the settlements. Settlements will produce accounting in general ledger for things like cash discounts, if it's realizing gains or losses, for instance, writing off is another example. In general, Dynamics 365 will always go back to the original invoice to figure out how to default the dimensions. It's much simpler than AX 2012. There were a lot more rules in 2012. It's much cleaner in Dynamics 365. So what do I mean by that? Let's say I had a free text invoice out there, and it had an AR account and one dimension. And the revenue side of it had the revenue and, let's say, 3 dimensions. What the accounting that happens if I settle that, and let's say there was a cash discount, the AR account will go back to that original invoice and pull the AR account and its dimension and apply that to the cash discount transaction. For the cash discount side of the accounting, it goes back to that revenue account and it finds the dimensions from that revenue account and applies that to the cash discount account. So I feel like Dynamics 365 gets you a lot closer to where you want to be. The accounting is much more precise than it was in Dynamics AX 2012. So that's a really good improvement. Let's cover one more area. And I want to cover the revaluation real quickly here. Let's see, do I have that saved? Nope, I don't. So let's see, under periodic, foreign currency revaluation. If you were in the AP session yesterday, I talked about this. The AP and AR revaluation are very similar, has the same parameters. And I want to talk about the 2 parameters that I get the most questions about. In terms of the method, we get a lot of questions. What's the difference between these? Standard is the most popular, and it simply checks the date that you input here, and it looks at the invoice date, does the comparison, finds the rate, and it will post unrealized gain or unrealized loss based on those differences. So basic foreign currency revaluation. The minimum I had shared too with the AP group. I've never heard or seen any of our customers use the minimum. Not that it's not being used, but I just personally haven't. It's not a real common scenario. It's very conservative. It will only post unrealized losses. So gains won't be shown. So if you want to be conservative on your financial statements, that would be a good method for you, using the minimum. And the invoice date, I consider that to be an undo. So let's say I did the standard method this morning. I imported bad exchange rates. So for whatever reason, I imported something from last year. So I want to undo it all. I could do that by selecting invoice date, because invoice date just goes back to the date that's on the original invoice and uses that exchange rate. So basically, it's unraveling my mistake. So that's an option for you. The other question that we get is around, of course, the dimensions. We had just gone through kind of the accounting. The revaluation, this is for the unrealized gain or unrealized loss account. It's asking you what dimensions do you want to apply. Most people will say posting because, again, that's going back to that original invoice, and it's saying I'm going to use the exact dimensions from my revenue account there. If you say none, it will not take any dimensions. And then table goes back to the customer's default dimensions. So not to the invoice, but to the customer's record. That's kind of the difference there. All right, we will cancel out of there, and let me just check my notes. Was there anything else I wanted to talk about? One settlement parameter that I'm simply going to mention. We do have a parameter that controls the order that things are settled. Under Accounts Receivable Parameters, and let's see, my Settlement tab. The priority is not something that's new in Dynamics 365, but it is a popular setting. So I just want to note that you can select the priority that the settlement is happening. For instance, we could go in here and maybe I'll kind of select a silly one. Let's say I wanted to have settlement happen by due date in descending order. So kind of mean to me, I would be penalizing my customers, basically trying to settle the newest invoices first and let everything else age. But you could do that through this particular option. Okay, Shivam, I think we made it through everything we needed to make it through. Let me just double check here. And just to give you, again, we talked about the order, the invoicing process, all the options there, tried to point out the best methods for you to use. In terms of the payments, we looked at the 3 methods of making the payments and the revaluation. I would encourage you to ask questions at this point. If you have to leave, though, Shivam and I will be here. The other option that you have, I just want to remind people that we have the Ask the Experts session at 9 a.m. tomorrow. I don't know what room it's in. I don't remember that, but do we have a slide on that, Shivam? Okay. The Ask the Experts, though, 9 a.m. for financials. You can ask any question on AR, AP, GL, bank. Please do come to that. We don't want you leaving this conference with an unresolved question. So if you don't get a chance to ask in this forum, please come to that. So with that, thank you so much for attending. I will release you. If you want to stay, though, for questions, please feel free.
Complete your service, please. And this is our contact information if you want to email us with any questions you have in the future. Thank you very much.
Does anyone have questions they want to? Yes.
Do you have any functionality where you have an invoice, and this has happened quite a few times, where they send out an invoice, nothing's going to change on it, let's say a typo, where they want, and we have to use that sales order number. So they're going out into Word or something else and copying it and making the adjustment. Is there anything within the program you can do to modify that invoice, not for any number, just like it's text or something else they want on it?
Great question. Thank you for that. His question is asking if you have a sales order invoice, you need to make an adjustment to it. You want to use that same sales order, maybe it's just some text that you have to change. How do you do that? Anyone else have that? Yes. I think that is our number one feature. We hear that request all the time, and no, we do not. You have to go through the whole process. It depends on, if you have to affect inventory or not, then you have to. Exactly. So in your case, it's just text. We do not have a solution for that. You can't use the reversals. That will stop you because you're blocked by the sales order.
It's high on our list.
It is.
We hear it all the time. We understand your pain. It's high on our list.
It's the same on the purchase order side.
Yep.
It's both. It's on both.
And the sales order side, for me, it seems like it's easier because we don't have to deal with, the inventory being sold out. Yeah, as compared to the purchase order side, it's a little bit more difficult because you have to deal with costing. But yes.
Correcting invoices on for free text invoices?
Yes, the correcting invoice is only for free text invoices.
Well, hold on. No, that functionality is available on sales order too, but it affects the inventory. Remember that. You have to reverse the sales order out and create a new one. Or
it's a manual.
It reuses the sales order number, but the invoice will be new one.
Yeah.
So that is a problem.
It will use the same invoice number?
No, just the same sales order number, but it'll be a new invoice number for you.
I'm working with the older versions of AX 2009, and when you have the admin right, you can go into AOT and into invoice journals and actually change the texts and actually reprint the invoice. But is that something that will never be available in, because I guess you don't have an AOT and so on in the dynamic, so you don't have this kind of access when you have admin rights either.
I don't think you'll be having that access
Yeah.
at the database level to go ahead and change those. So.
Yeah, the question was, you used to be able to do it through the AOT, like on 2009, and go in and change the journal directly.
But we'll be prioritizing this pretty high, so
Yeah.
we should try to get this out.
Can I ask, are most scenarios just text or an account, or what's the most common?
They're often addresses.
Address? Good. Well, how about you?
A note. Yeah.
A note?
Yeah. Sometimes you have
Prices for you? Okay. Okay.
prices, I think normally you do appraise and reverse it, but the addresses is very common. That is a wrong invoice address, the customer has made a mistake.
So you want to
Do it again,
reprint.
correct. Otherwise, it's quite complex. You need to reverse it just to get the correct address.
Right.
out of there.
Right.
So sometimes we even take it out and make it a Word document. I don't know. Yeah, that's what we do. Yes.
You have to be careful with sales tax. Because if you're changing an address and you fix it into tax for sales tax,
Yep.
Yeah.
in Europe and other areas it's not
Yeah. It ties. I think it's tied to the delivery terms on the
Right.
sales order. So yeah, absolutely.
Another question.
Just as an extension to that one, what is the suggested, or is there a suggested shortcut method when it does affect the inventory entry in the advanced warehouse management?
Yes, there is a functionality, and I want to. It is tied to the country-specific functionality, but you can enable it, and it is the same as the correction functionality on FedEx invoices that you saw, where it just copies everything onto the sales order, and then you can, change the lines there. But it'll affect your inventory. And that,
Still has to go through the advanced warehouse management process if you have it turned on. The only way I've seen to be able to come up with that is to have a warehouse that doesn't have advanced
okay, I see.
turned on, and then,
Right. Yeah, it does has to.
then it goes back to
Yeah.
Another warehouse, and then you have to bring it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there any other suggested way?
Not that I'm
I
aware of.
we're not
We
aware
have
of any
work to
other
do
except
there.
for that one. And this scenario we are hearing a lot. Actually, we were discussing the scenario a couple of days
We
back
were.
that we get a request for this a lot, and this is confirmation for us that this is very high on your list, so we'll prioritize it. So.